Hi, this is Jennifer, and I'm going to talk about reading in the second language and culture, chapter 6 of Gibbons. So, this chapter particularly stood out to me just because, although I was never an English language learner, I did struggle altogether in the English language because I had an IEP and I struggled a lot in school, especially with English, having dyslexia and what they call word finding issues with reading comprehension. So it does take me a very long time to read and write, longer than the average student. And my IEP did stick with me till high school. So being able to compare a lot to what they were teaching for English language learners is a lot how I was taught in special education or in resource, and methods they use to try to teach me in terms of reading. So the first was pause and predict. When the teacher has everyone read as a class and having a teacher stop and explain what's going on, because English language learners can be confused immediately after the first few paragraphs. So reassuring and understanding that everyone's there and asking questions, I feel like is very effective. Also shadow reading. I always found, and I'm sure English language learners find it way easier when the teacher's reading and they can follow along because the teacher talks more smoothly, and they're able to hear the words. And then rereading for detail, having students go back and reread it and try it again and try to understand what they read after rereading it a few times, I think is very helpful. And then word masking or reviewing a word. I know I always have a dictionary out every single time I read dictionary.com, and I know that students will not understand a whole paragraph because they don't know 5 words in it. So I think going over that vocabulary is super important. And then summarizing the text. I think that is super important because so many students have a hard time understanding the concepts, especially English language learners, when they don't even understand most of the time what they're reading. So being able to put that together and summarize it by reading the first sentence or sticky notes, just different ways, explain the key point to someone else, talking about it with someone else is sometimes more helpful than the teacher explaining it. And working in groups, being able to do it in a fun way, collaborate with students. Then I found this quote in the reading. It stood out. It said, "When we already know something about the field of text and the syntax of English, then the process of reading is speeded up because we won't need to decode each word one by one." And I can say students who do not speak English, I cannot imagine how they feel when they're given an English text and have to read it. Especially when they don't understand most of the words, because I struggle reading English text with a whole bunch of difficult vocabulary words and I don't understand what I'm reading. So I just feel like it's important for teachers to recognize that and not just assume that they can figure it out just because, they're talking about it or by gestures. So I felt like that was just something that I definitely can relate with. Then it says over here, in what ways, this was a question in the back of chapter 6, in what ways did your chapter affirm your own practice? So I kind of looked over here at the reading activities. I'm actually teaching math. Math was a very strong subject of mine. So I kind of found the reading activities that I could relate in a math class, such as a story map. Even though we're not talking about a story, it's kind of like going through a math problem step by step by step. Timelines, I feel like depending on what math you're teaching, timelines could be important to what do we learn in the first section, what do we learn in the second section, kind of seeing everything that they learned and being able to connect it even, kind of right in front of them. I feel like true false, I feel like that can be used in math. Students may not really grasp much of it, the true and false, but that can also be applied in a lot of questions for math. Key ring words. I know in math they have so many different words that can be dumbed down, essentially, like the mean, which is like adding all the numbers and dividing by the amount of numbers. But with all of these like big words, I think it's so important that students like write down the word and really understand what that means. So I feel like doing that after learning a section and just getting them to understand that word is super important. And then questioning the text, talking about how the math can relate to real life concepts, and just having open discussion about math with students who may have a lot of difficulty relating it to ideas that they're familiar with. So I really enjoyed this chapter because it was relatable, and when I feel like, even though it's for English language learners, when I feel like I can kind of see it from their point of view, I find the chapter very engaging. So yeah.